Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today, as usual. And it took me at least an hour to convince Jim Garrity not to make the 1-0 New York Jets the good martini today. But nonetheless, congratulations, Jim. It's probably been a while since they were 1-0.
No, actually, it started last year, and then we lost, 6 straight games or so. So
Okay.
It by itself isn't, but hey, you know what? I'll take it. I enjoy it. It's a good start to the season.
Absolutely. On to the good martini now, and we keep looking at polls that show Hillary Clinton in big, big trouble. There was a national poll from ABC over the weekend showing that she's lost a third of her support, tanking huge among white women, 64 down to 31%. But in the early state polls, Bernie Sanders is absolutely surging. In New Hampshire, it's Sanders 52, Clinton 30. In Iowa, where one poll just finally had him catching up, now it's a 10-point Sanders lead, 43 to 33. Obviously, if you factor Biden into the mix, things could change a little bit. But even with him in the question, those numbers still exist for Bernie Sanders. So obviously, Jim, he's gotten a free ride. There hasn't been much scrutiny by the media at all of what he's actually proposing, more just glossy reports on the crowd size and so forth. But there's a great confluence here of another outsider and an insider that even Democrats are fed up with.
Yeah, there are two ways to look at this. One is that, well, she hasn't had nearly the same kind of drop on the national level. So Bernie Sanders might do very well in Iowa and New Hampshire and then, hit a wall as you deal with states that have more heavily minority populations, and particularly in the on the Democratic primary side. You're going to have to broaden your appeal beyond white progressives. Having said that, this is an ominous indicator for Hillary, and I can't help but have a feeling that a portion of what's driving Sanders mania or Bernie mania so far is the fact that so much of the coverage really doesn't focus at what he does. I watched a bit of one of his speeches this weekend. This is a guy who's reading a raw envy message, and call me crazy, I don't think that's actually going to work here. It was very much the reason you're not doing as well as you want to be. It's because of rich people. He literally says billionaires are taking trillions of dollars from the working poor and putting into their bank accounts. Now, Greg, I don't know about you. I found Warren Buffett in my bedroom late at night, just taking money out of my wallet, the SOB. So, no, this is, the portrait here. I don't think this works well. I think the Democratic Party is, it's very clear that this man is a socialist. This is a man who very clearly believes that rich people themselves are the problem. And I don't think that will work. So it's good to see the Democrats going down this path. Even if Sanders doesn't end up getting the nomination and Hillary remains the nominee, it seems very likely she's going to come out of this pretty significantly damaged. And, that's probably a long-term good sign for Republicans on the right.
All right, on to the bad martini now, Jim. And of all of the failures of the Obama administration from the conservative perspective, the biggest two would probably be the looming Iran deal, as well as the massive failure with the reset button with Russia. Put those two together and you have our bad martini today. This is from the Washington Post, and I think folks have been seeing a little bit about this in the news over the past few days. In recent days, there's been a steady stream of reports detailing an escalation of Russian military activity in Syria. An investigation by Reuters, citing Lebanese sources, suggested that Russian troops had begun participating in operations in support of forces of the Syrian regime, a longtime Moscow ally. U.S. officials indicated that 2 Russian tank landing ships, aircraft, and naval infantry forces had reached Syria this week. This expanded military presence may signal Moscow's intent to play a more direct role in the Syrian endgame, or at the very least help the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad preserve what limited control it has over the war-ravaged country. Others say nothing's really changed. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, says, "We've always been frank regarding the presence of our military experts in Syria, who helped the Syrian army in training and learning how to use equipment." So it's back to the old conundrum. Obviously, the Syrians are under the auspices of the Iranians, but they are fighting ISIS, so there might be some silver lining here. But ultimately, Russia in bed with the mullahs even more since they helped them building their nuclear program. Not a good scene, Jim.
As we were taping this, Greg, I just happened to, look for a quick update. Apparently, it's just come across the wires. Russia has positioned about a half dozen tanks at a Syrian airfield where it has been steadily building up defenses. 2 U.S. officials told Reuters on Monday, speaking on condition of anonymity. 7 Russian T-90 tanks were seen at the airfield, as well as positioning artillery there. This is a stronghold of Bashar al-Assad. For everyone who is saying, how could Syria possibly get worse? It's worse. One of the things that's kind of interesting jumping out at this is that Bashar Assad, I suppose he's probably, celebrating in his fortified palace saying, finally I have the Russians coming to help me. Yeah, the question is just how much power the Russians want to give back, or whether the Russians are effectively establishing a permanent or semi-permanent presence in the Middle East. This is, another indicator of the vacuum that has been left. The United States has said, look, we're not dealing with Syria. We're going to do these little, bit-by-bit arming programs for certain rebels, but we're not, going to take military action. Well, there's a vacuum there. Now, I suppose you could say this could conceivably be good news if you feel like the Syrian civil war has been this relentless bloodletting in the Middle East, and that the best thing that can happen is for end with a winner one side or the other, and for ISIS not to be on the winning side. Then I guess you could say this is good news. The bad news is it ends with the guy who used chemical weapons against his own people remaining in power, and with Russia having a permanent foothold for military forces in the Middle East. That seems pretty bad for U.S. interests. And I'm sure the administration will issue some sort of strongly worded statement any day now.
I sold it short at the beginning. It's not just Iran and Russia. You got to throw in ISIS and the Syrian civil war. This is like the Obama foreign policy grand picnic here, unfolding in the worst possible way. And this
is like the Long Island iced tea of bad forces, right? And they just keep throwing them in there.
What will be the State Department hashtag on this one? Because I'm sure that'll be the response.
Ugh, what a mess.
All right, on to the crazy now, and staying overseas, but this time to England. Those of you who are fans of old-time radio or just fans of pop culture may know this little line.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of the David Cameron-run Conservative administration in Britain? The shadow cabinet of Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn knows. Jeremy Corbyn has unveiled what he calls a unifying new shadow cabinet, naming his left-wing ally John McDonnell as shadow chancellor. Defeated leadership rival Andy Burnham is shadow home secretary, while Hilary Benn remains shadow foreign secretary. The most senior roles on the Labour front bench are all taken by men, leading to criticism from some MPs, but half of the total posts went to women, including defense, shadow defense, education, business, and health. Jim, what pretend job would you like in my administration?
When it comes to pretend job creation, I suppose he has a good record to point to there. It's tough to get a sense of just how odd this is in the eyes of the Brits. We have some great contributors, Andrew Studiford and Charlie Cook, trying to put some perspective on this. But our John Flynn points out this guy Corbyn wants Great Britain, the United Kingdom to leave NATO. Often excuses what Vladimir Putin does. Wants Britain to give up the nuclear deterrent. Greg, gee, what could happen there? And by the way, he supports unlimited migration by refugees into Britain. Picture Bernie Sanders' kookier, further left, angrier cousin, and you have an idea of what they've just put. Now, in some ways, this is good news, right? Because he hangs out with Holocaust deniers, terrorists, anti-Semites. That almost goes without saying if he's a British leftist, right? I almost, it's surprising I need to go with that. In some ways, this is good news. This means that the Conservative Party is probably more likely to stay in charge of Britain for a longer period of time. From perspective of those of us on the U.S. right, David Cameron has not exactly been one unremitting success after another, but slightly more right of center. What's interesting is this: just as Bill Clinton kind of pushed the Dukakis-Mondale era, 1980s Democratic Party further to the center, that Tony Blair had very much pushed the Labour Party back to the center. And he's seeing it all completely undone since he's left office. This is now a far-left party in Britain, reaching the point where it may not be politically relevant anymore, particularly if apparently Scotland was always the base of the Labour Party, and there's still talk of more Scottish independence. I know they feel like they just had a referendum on this. You'd think that would have settled it. They want to do another referendum. We'll see how that one shakes out. But I'd rather have a sane Labour Party than the insane one that we do. So it's kind of a bad news. I just look it over the Corbyn agenda. I think that qualifies as our crazy martini for today.
So Mitt Romney never came up with his shadow cabinet, right?
Yes. That I had a chance to talk to Paul Ryan like a year after the election, and he's like, I was like, so how you dealing? And he's like, oh, I know more than anybody else what we were going to do and what could have been. And he didn't cry. He just looked really wistful. So I have a feeling it would have been a really good cabinet. So another cheery end to the 3 Martini lunch.
Yes. All right, on to Tuesday. Jim, talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and be sure to tune in again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.